What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Another video means another dopamine high because of the buy something that feels something. And it's been quite a while. It's been about 4-ish months since I've last uploaded, and you guys know that I just hate not making content for you guys, so I do apologize for the hiatus or the drought. But I've been really busy with life, and I just haven't had time to really put any videos together, but that changes now. And for today's video, we are taking a look at Hasbro's Star Wars The Black Series Mandalorian and Grogu, specifically for the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. And with this release, I think this is our 16th Djarin figure that we've seen in the Black Series, which honestly, I'm not surprised because the Mandalorian is probably the most issued franchise in the Black Series with just over 100 figures. Like, seriously, I looked it up. Like, the original trilogy movies probably have somewhere around 60, but the Mandalorian is just over 100, which is crazy. And despite that, Djarin actually isn't the most issued or reissued or re-release, however you want to look at that figure slash character in the Black Series. It is appropriately Luke Skywalker with over 30 releases. And the information I just presented to you is from the Galactic Figures website, which is one of the largest Star Wars collecting catalogs I've ever seen, and I use them for all my videos. If I ever have a question, they typically have the answers. So shout out to galacticfigures.com for, presenting me with the information I just presented to you. And returning our attention back to the figures, if at any point during or after this video you realize you want to pick up this release for yourself, you can add a handful of locations slash websites. Starting off for $34.99, we have good old Hasbro Pulse, Entertainment Earth, and the Big Bad Toy Store. And then for $34.97, you can pick up this figure at Walmart or Amazon. And then for a whopping $36.99, there is the GameStop website. And one last site that doesn't have this figure for some reason, but I'm gonna bring it up anyways, is Target. And the only reason I do bring this up is because I went to my local Target and this 2-pack is there. Even the first edition release is there, which is strange because the first edition is actually exclusive to Walmart's and Target's, and for some reason Target doesn't have either releases on their website. So for now, in the description of the video, there will be no link to Target, and when that changes, I will obviously come back and edit the description of the video. But like I mentioned, you have Hasbro Pulse, GameStop, Walmart, Entertainment Earth, Big Bad Toy Store, and Amazon to choose from. But with all that said, I think it's time that we open up these figures. And when it comes to the packaging, it is our standard Black Series packaging, just sized up to fit everything included. And we have a nice bold blue for the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. On the side, we have a portrait of Djarin and Grogu, and we get a better look at that portrait on the back with a brief description of what they're all about. And then there's nothing on that side. So going back to the front, it looks like everything that should be included is included. So with all that said, let's open up this box. And right out of the box, I can confirm that this is a good looking Djarin figure. By this point, Hasbro should have this character's design down, seeing that this is like the 16th release that we've gotten of Djarin. And obviously this figure is the depiction of how Din is going to appear in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. And the last Djarin figure that we got that wasn't the updated season 1 appearance of Djarin was the 2024 release of the Mines of Mandalore Djarin, which was from Mando season 3, which was the last time that we saw him on screen. And the difference between that figure's appearance and this figure's appearance is starting off the straps for, his holster and his belt. Basically all the leather work on his body is now a lighter shade of brown, and the pads on his hips and the knee pad on his left leg are now the same shade of gray that the padding under his chest piece are, rather than them being blue previously. And I actually like these changes made to Din's design. I think that the lighter shade of brown for the straps actually makes it look more like leather, and I feel that the switch from blue to gray really just unifies the entire outfit for Djarin. It just makes it look a whole lot cleaner. And then if you want to get all nerdy and metaphorical, the more that Din's armor unifies, the more it reflects on his character development as a Mandalorian and as a father to Grogu. But after that, everything else on this figure we have seen before, and it looks great as ever. The Beskar is Beskar-ing, the undersuit is undersuiting, and the accessories are accessoring. But no, really, the armor looks great with that nice silver metallic shine. I love the various wrinkles and folds sculpted into the undersuit to really give it that fabric effect, and the various smaller straps and accessories found throughout his body just really bring this figure to life. And I think my favorite thing about this figure is the cloth goods cape. This is the third time Djarin has gotten a cloth goods cape, which is crazy because again, there's like 16 releases of this figure, and Hasbro is now just giving him cloth goods. I mean, they did start back in 2024, so for 2 years now they've been doing this. I mean, there was that weird thing with the Mines of Mandalore Din having a plastic cape, but it seems that the last release, which was the season 1 appearance, and this one obviously have a cloth cape, so it looks like they're sticking to that, which is very good because it allows for Din to be posed in a variety of ways and it doesn't interfere with the jetpack that is included. And I will always say that cloth goods are better than just a stiff plastic mold, and I just love how it looks. It's a nice shade of black and it's got some wear and tear on the bottom to give it some character. So overall, I could not be happier with how this figure looks. And then for Grogu, they say that this is a figure, but he is molded to one position, and I think he acts more as an accessory in this 2-pack, but that comment aside, I think he looks fine visually. He's got a bunch of wrinkles and folds in his robe to really give it that cloth effect. The shading of the hair looks really nice, you know, kind of brings him to life. Kind of would have been a little weird just having a bald baby Yoda. And then they did put some pink in the ears to, again, give it some life. And again, there's not too much to go over. It's just a tiny little guy. So kicking off articulation, we can rotate the head 360 degrees, and then we are able to sway the head side to side, and then we are able to sway the head up and down as well. And with all that range, we're able to sway the head in a spherical range of motion. And then moving over to the arm, we can rotate it up and over 360 degrees, but we can also spin the arm 360 degrees in this horizontal position. The arm can come up and down a decent amount, and if you flip the arm 180 degrees and don't mind the shoulder plate, you could also further bring the arm up and down. And then we do have a butterfly joint here to further extend the arm forward. And then moving down the arm, we can rotate the elbow down 360 degrees, and we actually get a really nice elbow bend out of this figure. The forearm or the gauntlet around the forearm doesn't get in the way at all. And the forearm can even rotate 360 degrees independently from the rest of the arm. And then with the hand, we can rotate it 360 degrees and bend the wrist however we please. And despite not being able to rotate his torso 360 degrees due to the straps, the range is still pretty good and allows for a realistic range of motion nonetheless. And then we can sway the torso side to side, and we can get some back and forth movement as well. And I would say you could rotate the legs 360 degrees, but the hip pad does kind of get in the way. So if you want to push your limits, you can get that full 360 degree rotation, but the range that we are given without going through the pad is good nonetheless. And the splittage on this figure is really good. While it's not a full split, there's tons of range to work with, and at the thigh area you can pivot the legs as well. Then moving down, you can rotate the knee down 360 degrees, and for the knee bend we can get a 90 degree bend. It'd be a little nicer if we can go beyond that 90 degree mark, but 90 degrees isn't horrible, and I think this is due to the strap on the knee pad getting in the way of the joint. But if you did want to make it look like Din has broken his leg, you can bend the leg forward, which is pretty interesting. I don't think I've tried this with any other of the Din figures that I have. And then independently from the rest of the leg, you can rotate the calf 360 degrees. Then when it comes to the boot, you can rotate it 360 degrees and bend the ankle however you please. And then when it comes to Grogu, you can rotate his head 360 degrees, which I wasn't expecting articulation on this guy in the first place, but you can also move his arms up and over 360 degrees. And I'm assuming this is because where you mount him on Djarin to try and make him fit better. And then you can also rotate his feet to, again, probably better adjust him to where you can mount him on Din. And starting off this segment, we have Din's jetpack, which is obviously a part of his attire. We've seen this jetpack before with previous releases. It fits via pegs into peg holes and it stays in all nice and snug. And me personally, I've never had any issues with this jetpack. I think the mold is fine. I think the paint application is fine. And because this is a modern Black Series jetpack, if you have the blast effects from the Return of the Jedi Boba Fett, you can put them in the thrusters for this jetpack as well. And honestly, at this point, Black Series should just include these effects for any figure that comes with the jetpack, seeing that, you know, if you're gonna have the thrusters to support the effect, you know, include it. And I almost forgot to mention that the jetpack is also where you're supposed to mount Grogu if you want to display him with Din. And as nice as this is, I will say it is very finicky to keep Grogu on if you do manage to get him on the first try, because man, does Grogu not like sticking to this jetpack. And we actually have a swappable hand included for this figure, only one for the right hand, and it's for the 2 melee weapons included with this figure. I don't mind spoiling that because I'm going to show them right after this, but it is nice to see that Hasbro is giving us a hand to hold the thinner accessories that come with Din. So for our first weapon, we have one of the 2 melee weapons included, and that is Din's knife. We've seen this before. It's got a pretty solid paint job, well, a simple paint job I should say, with the silver for the blade and the hilt, and then some dark gray for the handle. The sculpt work is pretty nice because there is a level of detail here, and just like with all the previous releases, the knife does slide into Din's boot if you did want to store it there, and it slides right into the swappable hand included. Very nice, and it doesn't move or wobble, which is awesome because with the previous releases, trying to have this knife stay in the hand of the trigger finger hand for Din, or the default hands for pretty much any Black Series figure, was just a pain in the ass. It would always fall out, and just you can never really have him holding it. And then for our second melee weapon, we do have this sword. Din no longer has the Darksaber, and you know, obviously a knight needs his sword. And that, on the side tangent, I've noticed that Din has gone from a nomadic cowboy to a knight, which I mean, we saw that in like season 2. But anyway, sorry. We have a sword now, which is a whole ass sword. I'm assuming that he gets this during the gladiator fight, which we've seen teased in the trailers. Honestly though, who knows? It's just cool to see that Din is getting a whole ass sword. But as for the visual presentation, it's pretty simple. The majority of the sword is silver while the handle is black. It's got some nice detailing with the hilt and the handle. And overall, I can't complain about how this accessory looks visually. I just can't wait to see how he gets it and how he uses it in the movie. Then for our third weapon included, we do have Din's IB-94 blaster pistol. It is nice to see that he's still using this and carrying this around in the galaxy. But as for the accessory included, it looks good. It's got a very simple paint job of some brown and some gray. I am actually a really big fan of the wood texture on the handle. I think Hasbro nailed that. But as for the rest of the gun, it's filled with the detail. I love to see all this detail packed onto such a small canvas, and overall cannot complain about the visuals here. And obviously Din has a holster, so if you don't want him carrying it but you want to see it displayed on his person, you can do so. And for the fourth and final weapon, we have Din's new rifle. Now, by no means is this the classic phase pulse blaster that Din used to disintegrate some Jawas with. This is a brand new rifle that, as far as I know, doesn't disintegrate things, but it looks really cool nonetheless. And from what I've gathered, it's actually made up of 3 different World War I weapons. It's made up of an MP-18 submachine gun. I see some Lee Enfield rifle in there, and then we have the Webley flare gun in the stock of this blaster, which is also the same gun that Boba Fett's blaster, the EE3, is based off of. And I just love the design of this. It's very Star Wars of taking real world guns and making them look sci-fi. So props to the prop department on making this blaster. As for the actual toy, I think it looks great. Hasbro did such a great job at making the wood furniture look like wood by sculpting in the grain and line work that you would see in wood furniture. I love the various different bolts and screws and wiring throughout the body and stock. I love the detail with the heat shield on the barrel. I love just everything that they put into this blaster. It just looks really great. I guess my only gripe with the accessory is that if you do try to fit it in Din's hand, it doesn't really line up with the handle and the trigger guard. But after that, this thing looks great. And one thing that I didn't expect was that the scope is removable. I thought I broke the thing, but no, it is removable. Be careful though, because it does come off very easily. And I'm telling you right now, there is going to be a scene in the movie where he takes the scope off and he uses it as a telescope for some reason rather than just like aiming down the sight with the blaster. If not, I'll genuinely be surprised. I don't know. And here we are at the turntable segment of the video, pretty much going over general thoughts and discussions on the figures at hand. Pretty much pros, cons, strengths, weaknesses, stuff like that. And I usually get the sour stuff out of the way first because I don't like dwelling on the negative any longer than I already have to. So for the negatives, there's only two things that come to mind, and the first one is Grogu's finickiness when it comes to latching on the Din's jetpack. I mean, it is possible and you can get him to stay, but he's so fragile that like if you just push Din oh so slightly, he will fall off, and that's even if you can get Grogu to stay on the first try. And then the second negative thing that comes to mind is the situation with Din's trigger finger hand and the rifle not really lining up. Now obviously the easy fix would be Hasbro giving us a swappable hand that fits perfectly into the rifle, but obviously they're not going to do that. And don't get me wrong, you can get the hand to fit, it's just you can obviously tell that you're stretching out the trigger finger hand in order to make it work. So I guess it isn't the end of the world, but it is something I did notice. And then moving over to the positives, there's a lot to like about this release. Starting off with the visuals, both Grogu and Din look very good. Very happy with, you know, what was changed about this figure, because obviously a lot of this figure we've seen already from previous releases, and like I said earlier, there's nothing wrong. They didn't change anything that they didn't need to. But when it comes to the changes that they did make, I thought, you know, making the blues gray and making the leather a lighter shade of brown was the right move. And of course, a cloth goods cape is just always a W for the Black Series. And as for the articulation, there's nothing really that stands out. There's nothing bad to say, but there's nothing like that, again, that sticks out. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. This is pretty standard, especially for the Djarin mold. And the big positive when it comes to accessories is the amount that come with this release. We get 2 blasters, 2 melee weapons, and a swappable hand to support said melee weapons, which is another positive. I really love that Hasbro actually gave us a hand to have Din wield the melee weapons included, because they could have easily just, you know, not done that and just given us the 2 weapons and had us deal with it like we have with previous releases. But them including that swappable hand is just a major positive in my book. And one positive that kind of bounces off of the accessories and, you know, everything included is that for the price of this, what is labeled a 2-pack, I don't feel like this release should be considered a 2-pack, because Grogu doesn't really feel like a figure. He feels more like an accessory. But regardless, the price in which this releases, which is $10 more than the standard Black Series release, which is now $27.99. Jesus Christ, but it's just for an additional $10, you get a bunch of extra goodies, or more than what you would typically get with a Black Series figure. And I don't think that's an awful, you know, price to what's included ratio. But overall, I think that this is a solid release by Hasbro. I mean, obviously they want to make this release as perfect as possible for the upcoming movie, but with this release we get a great Din figure that looks great, the articulation is great, and comes with a bunch of accessories, and you get a Grogu included. So if you're like me and you don't have a Grogu yet, this is the perfect release to get a Grogu. And you get all this stuff for roughly around $10 more than your typical Black Series release. So for what you get versus what you pay, it's not an awful ratio. So whether you're just getting into collecting the Black Series or you've yet to get a Din figure, I feel like this is the perfect place to start, because you get yourself a clean looking Din, you get Grogu, and you get a bunch of accessories to play around with. So with all that said, that is the Mandalorian and Grogu for the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. So if you have this release already, I'm more than curious to hear what you got to say about this figure, whether you liked it or dislike it. I obviously want to get a conversation started in the comment section below, so feel free to comment your thoughts down there. I most likely will reply to y'all's comments, because I obviously like talking about this stuff. And if you've yet to pick up this figure and you are interested, I have links in the description of the video to multiple sites on where you can buy yourself this figure. And if you did enjoy today's video, a like and a subscription would be greatly appreciated. And like I said, feel free to comment your thoughts if you feel like moving those thumbs of yours. And don't worry about the bell, because we both know that shit is broken. And if you want to see more content like this, I already have a handful of Black Series videos on the channel, so feel free to go check those out. And if you're interested in any other franchises such as Halo or Warhammer or Alien, Predator, Alien vs Predator, or anything like that, I have reviews on the channel covering those franchises. So again, feel free to go check those out. And with all that said, please have a great day and please stay hydrated.